Belarus, the country with beautiful women, amazing forests, fascinating lakes, and much more. Belarus was one of the countries that were part of the now extinct Soviet Union. It can be affirmed that this nation is situated in the northern part of Europe. It's important to note that Belarus's territorial expanse does not compare to the vastness of Russia, but when compared to other European nations, it can be said to have a considerable area, covering 207,000 square kilometers. In this territory, a population of 9.5 million people enjoys adequate and relatively tranquil space. The population density is not high, contributing to the stability of the country. In 1991, like most countries of the Soviet Union, Belarus declared its independence. Although it is now an independent nation, it maintains a close ally relationship with Russia in all circumstances, including hypothetical scenarios like a potential war between Russia and the whole of Europe. Despite its geographical location between two societies with distinct mentalities, Europe and Russia, the country attracts attention due to its close affinity with Russia. The leadership of the country consistently expresses loyalty to Russia and Vladimir Putin on all occasions. The nation seems to be deeply rooted in Russian culture, with its interests aligned accordingly. Furthermore, a closer examination of Belarus's recent history reveals constant disputes between Russia and Poland until the 20th century. In the past, the country's borders were frequently redrawn by the Russian, Polish, and Austrian empires. During World War I, Belarus was occupied by the Germans, but this occupation did not solidify due to Germany's defeat in the war. Poland took advantage of the country's vulnerability, resulting from German occupations and turmoil in the Russian Empire, leading to the annexation of parts of Belarusian territory. Subsequently, the country joined the Soviet Union, adding to what already existed of its lands. It is quite likely that one of the regions to be targeted by Europe is Belarus due to its geographical proximity. Additionally, the Belarusian people have closer linguistic and ancestral ties with Russia. More than 80% of the country's population follows the Orthodox faith, while the presence of Catholics and members of other religions is significantly reduced compared to the Orthodox. As known in countries considered the epicenter of Europe, the proportion of Catholics is considerably higher than that of Orthodox. In fact, in Europe in general, Belarus stands out for having a relatively smaller presence of Russian speakers compared to Russia. Belarus shares a notable affinity with Russia in practically all aspects. However, as Belarus moves towards modernization, it also exhibits notable differences from Russia, aligning more with the Western European model. Now, a controversial issue is the death penalty, which is practiced in Belarus. Unlike most European countries, President Lukashenko, who has been in power since 1994, maintains his support for the death penalty in the country. This has generated intense criticism from the Western world. However, it is important to note that executions in Belarus are relatively rare. For example, only 2 people were sentenced to death after the 2011 metro attack in Minsk. Additionally, Lukashenko is often referred to as the last dictator in Europe due to the perception that the Belarusian government does not adhere to expected democratic standards in the region. For many decades, Belarus remained practically isolated from the world. It was extremely challenging to visit the country as a tourist, as most global citizens needed visas, which were notoriously difficult to obtain. However, in recent years, Belarus has taken steps to open its doors to foreign tourism. In 2017, it allowed citizens from 74 countries to visit the country for up to 5 days without the need for a visa. Recently, this concession has been extended to a period of 30 days. Whether you arrive by plane from Russia, by train from Poland, or by bus from the Baltic countries, it is possible to enter Belarus and enjoy a stay of up to 3 months without complications. Additionally, it is important to have valid medical insurance in Belarus, covering at least 10,000 euros. Another requirement is to present proof of subsistence. This can be in the form of cash, traveler's checks, securities, a letter of guarantee from a person who has invited the visitor and declares willingness to cover all costs related to the guest's stay and departure, or a bank statement issued up to 10 days before the trip. Currently, Belarus does not face significant challenges in terms of public security. However, it is important to note that the tranquility in the country does not necessarily stem from a high level of civility among the population. While nightlife and alcohol consumption are quite active, crime rates remain controlled. The crucial factor for maintaining public order is not so much a civilized culture, but rather the presence of a mechanism of fear that deters people from engaging in criminal activities. This balance in public order is largely maintained thanks to the effective action of civil police on the streets, and even in public places. There are more plainclothes officers than uniformed police officers. Therefore, what may seem like an ordinary person is often an undercover police officer present for security reasons. A notable example of this approach is the presence of shared bathrooms in some nightclubs, where men and women use the same bathrooms without gender distinction. Although these situations could theoretically create opportunities for security problems, the effective presence of civil police has contributed to avoiding such incidents. Undoubtedly, tourism represents one of the main revenue generators in the country, alongside the remaining industrial establishments from the Soviet period. For this reason, authorities seek to project a positive image of the country on the international stage. However, it is important to note that the free movement of people is strictly controlled, especially due to the dictatorial style of leadership prevailing in the country. Any form of criticism or opposition to the president is strictly prohibited and can have serious consequences for the individual within Belarus. This translates into a significant restriction of freedom of expression, preventing open discussion of the problems faced by the country. While Belarus seeks to attract tourists, most people with financial resources hesitate to invest in the country or spend extended periods there due to the oppressive regime. It is important to recall that approximately 2 years ago, the population of Belarus was on the brink of an outbreak of discontent that resulted in protests across the country against the president. Interestingly, despite the protests and actions, Lukashenko continues to win all elections with an overwhelming margin of 90% of the votes, while the opposition suffers consecutive defeats after each election. Many opposition members leave the country in search of safety. However, Belarus has a vibrant cultural and entertainment scene despite the oppressive nature of the government. It is an exciting country in many aspects. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Check out the last video that is appearing on the screen. You will be surprised.